It's funny to look back and think how naive I was buying my first sawmill. In my mind, I thought it would be like owning my own Home Depot where I could just cut my own lumber for any project, anytime that I wanted to. And there's some truth to that. You can cut a lot of boards, you can do a lot of projects, but it's very different than I thought it was going to be when I bought that first LT40 Woodmizer sawmill. There are three things that have really changed for me since that first sawmill. The first is my understanding of what it really takes to produce any piece of wood. Not only in handling logs, but cutting those logs and managing not only the lumber you're going to keep, but the offcuts and the waste that you're going to have to get rid of. I was very naive in thinking that it wouldn't be tough to deal with all of that. But we spend a lot of time in the cleanup, the offcuts, the sawdust, the bark, in getting rid of that, and handling all of that waste takes a lot of time, effort, and energy that I just didn't account for. The second thing that really surprised me about cutting my own lumber was what it takes to handle all of these giant trees. Now, I understand that what we're cutting is probably bigger than what most people cut, and the trees are probably bigger and boards are bigger, but just what it takes to be able to pick those trees up and move them around, and then get them up onto the mill and spin them around and cut them and then get them off the mill, was a real eye-opener, in that just a simple skid loader or a tractor isn't going to do it. On some of the larger beams that we've cut in building the house, some of those are 8,000 and 9,000 pounds for those ridge beams. We've had to pick those up with a 48,000 pound excavator, and we have broken some straps in moving stuff around trying to handle those trees. The third thing that really surprises me all these years later is what a tree snob I have become. I used to think that a tree was a tree was a tree, and now I am very picky about the trees that I will buy, but even more picky about the ones that I will put onto the sawmill. There was a time when I would put any tree on the sawmill, cut up every tree, and now I have become very, very picky about what trees I'll cut. I absolutely love Doug fir for anything structural. I like the color, I like the strength, and I like the size that I can get out of Doug fir. But I'm really picky about Doug fir trees, even counting the number of limbs, which is going to indicate how many knots there's going to be. These are things that I didn't even know that I would consider or think about when I bought my very first sawmill. The other tree that I really like, if it's not Doug fir, is cedar. Here in North Idaho, we have a lot of cedars, and those cedars can get pretty big. I really like cutting the cedar. It's really pretty for trim. We did all of our fascia on the house is 1 inch by 12 inch cedar, and it's really, really pretty. But even the cedar trees, I'm really picky about what I would put on the mill and what I would cut. Who knew that I would become a tree snob all these years later? Our sawmill now is specifically set up to cut posts and beams. It's got a really long track extension that will allow us to cut up to 45 foot long. Some of the posts that we have in the house are 14 inches by 18 inches. And some of the ridge beams, our biggest ridge beam is 18 inches wide and 28 inches tall. People ask me all the time if I would recommend a sawmill or which sawmill I would recommend. I'm not sure it matters which sawmill you get. They're all going to have their pros and cons. But I would tell anybody to get a small mill, start small, start cutting, and see where it goes. I look back at all of the fun projects that we've built. I look at the joy in building our own home, and I think everybody should have a mill and everybody should cut boards for whatever project it is that they're working on. I would love to hear from you in the comments down below what sawmill it is that you're cutting with and what kind of projects you're working on.